Robert Plant lost his 5-year-old son in 1977. John Bonham was dead 3 years later. Led Zeppelin was over by Christmas of 1980. Every one of those losses traces back to one stone manor on Loch Ness, the house Jimmy Page bought in 1970 from an estate agent who could not get rid of it. Page sold it in 1991, and he has not set foot on the property since. In April 2026, after 127 years, the doors opened to the public. Page sent his congratulations. He did not come. Here is why. The Boleskine House Foundation opened the doors of a house that had been locked, scorched, and rumored to be cursed for more than a century. The man who once owned it did not come to the opening. He has not been on the property since he sold it in 1991. The house has burned down twice in the last decade. The man who lived inside it for 22 years told the BBC, on camera, what he believed had been bricked up behind the wall of the room he slept in.
Probably one of the first episodes that made the biggest impression on me was sitting in bed or half lying in bed, and something outside the door of my bedroom was snuffling under the door, which it started off as if it was a dog and then became very much more powerful as a sound and as a noise and as an impression, to the extent that I snapped on a light beside the bed and was, well, I have to confess, very, very frightened, because it became extremely noisy and as if the door was going to come through.
On our last video, you saw Robert Plant told you what he carried home from the road. In this video, Jimmy Page tells you what he was building while it broke him. In the summer of 1970, in a Welsh cottage called Bonham, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant wrote the opening of Stairway to Heaven.
There's a lady shoe, all that glitters is gold.
12 months later, Page bought a stone house on the southeast shore of Loch Ness from an estate agent who could not get rid of it. It had previously belonged to a man named Aleister Crowley. By the autumn of 1976, an American filmmaker named Kenneth Anger would walk out of Page's London home, give a series of statements to a journalist, and publicly curse him by name. 9 months after that curse, Robert Plant's son was dead. 3 years after that, Page's drummer was dead. 12 years after that, Page sold the house and never went back. If you're still here, you're our kind of viewer. Hit subscribe. There's more coming. The first thing you need to know about the house is that nobody who has ever owned it has been able to get rid of it cleanly. Not even the man who built its mythology. Crowley was 24 years old. He had inherited a fortune from his father's brewery. He paid roughly twice the asking price for a stone manor on Loch Ness because he believed its geography matched the requirements of an 18th century occult ritual called the sacred magic of Abramelin the Mage. The ritual called for 6 months of seclusion, and at the end of it, the practitioner was supposed to summon a presence the texts called the Holy Guardian Angel. Crowley walked away from the house before he finished. He spent the next 13 years trying to reach the same goal in other places, and never did. What happened in the house after Crowley left? It became local folklore. On Tuesday, November 8, 1960, a retired British Army major bought it. Within months, he had killed himself in the front hallway with a shotgun.
He had supposed to have a room of his own as you come in the front door, and his own room and bathroom there. And I went to look, and there he was in front of this big mirror, and his head off. So I was so scared, I did run back to her bedroom, which was quite a distance, you know. And I said, the major shot himself, Mrs. Grant.
By 1969, the house was empty, priced below the market, and quietly for sale. One 26-year-old guitarist had been waiting to buy it since he was 14. In December of 1970, Jimmy Page closed on Boleskine House. He did not live there. He hired an old school friend named Malcolm Dent to live there as caretaker. Dent was 23 years old. He knew nothing about Aleister Crowley.
I had no idea why he'd bought Boleskine House, the estate. I hadn't ever heard of Aleister Crowley. So arriving at Boleskine and discovering, one, that it has a history and a past, and a pretty weird past at that. Two, that there are certain things still going on there. Three, there are people who will visit the place to experience this and even practice it. And four, that one of my oldest friends seemed to be actively involved one way or another in this. There was a lot of things to sort of take in.
The first thing he learned was that Page's other friends spent the night uncomfortable in the same way.
Having spent quite a few nights there, I felt very uncomfortable when I went to bed. The lights were out. I would go off to sleep. I always go off to sleep immediately. But I always woke up at 2, 3 in the morning with feeling very uncomfortable. There was a definite feeling of a presence, a very strong presence that was trying to maybe get into you.
What Dent eventually went on the BBC and described in 2000 was the night that locked the rest of his life into the house. He woke alone in the bedroom. Crowley's own writings had identified as the center of the building. Something was outside the door. It would not stop. And when it stopped, Dent had a theory about what had been there.
Crowley, when he was raising the various demons and spirits at Boleskine, failed to banish all of them back from whence they came, and that 1 or 2 residues had been left behind. And he actually mentions that he had left this one bricked up, in, as he put it, in the center of Boleskine House. The room I was in that night was the center of Boleskine House.
If the title brought you here, hit subscribe, because the part most fans have never heard sits in the second half of this video. While Dent lived inside what he believed was the bricked-up demon Crowley left behind, Jimmy Page kept writing. And during those same years at Boleskine, the band's 7th album took shape. The title Page chose was Presence. Yes, Presence. The same word every guest who'd slept upstairs had used to describe the thing trying to get in. Presence is the band's hardest, most claustrophobic record. Dark, urgent, riff-driven from the first track to the last. Achilles' Last Stand, For Your Life, Royal Orleans. Page's hand on every one. Page took more creative control on this one than on any Zeppelin record since the first, writing most of the music himself, shaping the lyrics, producing the sessions.
I was very interested actually in Eastern and Western mysticism, and I spent time reading and researching when I was younger. Yeah, I guess that's it. There were some very eminent characters in the Golden Dawn, and I found it very interesting to see the history of those that had been in it, and this sort of esoteric movement, and also sort of what went on, the offshoots of it, of that sort of.
That is Page in 2017 at the Oxford Union, finally saying out loud the word he had refused to say in print for 40 years. He was 73 years old. Also at the Oxford Union, the last on-camera question he has ever answered about his connection to the occult. The student who asked him had brought up the Stairway played backwards rumor.
They started to play back all manner of records, and of course we were going to be main candidates for it. And somebody said, oh, it says My Sweet Satan in it. And I thought, oh, gosh, it's hard enough writing the music one way round rather than backwards.
If you've never heard a rock star dodge a question that smoothly, smash that like button, because that was a masterclass. By 1975, Page was deep into a second project at the house, a soundtrack for an underground filmmaker named Kenneth Anger. In September of 1976, Kenneth Anger walked out of Jimmy Page's London townhouse for the last time. The two had been collaborating since 1973 on a film called Lucifer Rising. Page had composed 23 minutes of music for it at Boleskine and at his London studio. Nine months later, Karac plant was dead. The phone rang in the Royal Orleans Hotel in New Orleans. The tour collapsed. The band never played America again. 3 years and 2 months later, on September 25th, 1980, John Bonham was found dead at Jimmy Page's house in Windsor after a 14-hour drinking session. He was 32 years old. Zeppelin dissolved on December 4th. Page sold Boleskine in 1991. Malcolm Dent stayed at the house until 92 and died of natural causes in 2011, 4 years before the building burned for the first time. The first fire was on December 23rd, 2015. The second was on July 31st, 2019. By the second fire, the house had been empty for 3 years, and the new owner had bought it for a symbolic price 5 days earlier. His name is Keith Reddy. He runs the Boleskine House Foundation, a registered Scottish charity, and he is the reason there is a house standing on the site at all in 2026.
In 2019, when it came up for sale, who would buy a pile of rubble? I guess I did.
Okay.
On April 10th, 2026, Reddy and his team opened the doors of Boleskine House to the public for the first time since Crowley walked into it in 1899. 127 years of holding their breath. Finished. The house is restored. The demons, if they were ever there, are still bricked up where Crowley left them. Jimmy Page sent his congratulations. He did not attend. He has not gone back to the house. But once, only once, the three of them went back to the music. "20 million people applied for tickets. 20,000 got in. Imagine being one of them."
But I knew, the lasting memory of it was that I knew that what we intended to do, which was to go out there and stand up and be counted, and let people who maybe didn't know Led Zeppelin but had heard a lot about it, to show why we were what we were. And not only that, we were really, we'd had a really good time that night. We made a lot of people happy.
That is Page in 2012, at the press conference for the film of the band's 2007 reunion at the O2 in London, with John Bonham's son Jason on drums. The three surviving members played together that one night, and never again. They never reopened Boleskine. They never explained the curse. What they did instead was build a body of music that has outlived everything that tried to destroy it, including the man who tried to destroy it on a piece of paper in 1976. And despite everything they lost, every guitarist still studies Page. Every singer still chases Plant. Every drummer still measures himself against Bonham. No rock band has ever cast a longer shadow. If you watched both halves of this story, you have seen what most people who love Led Zeppelin only know in pieces. The phone call that broke them, and the house that started it. Share this video with someone who still plays the records. They are who this was made for. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe. We cover the real stories behind the music. No sugarcoating, no clickbait, just rock and roll the way it actually happened. See you next time on The Long Way to the Rock.